behind the hazy records of history, one story always resurfaces. Thales, a man from Miletus, invited to the grand palace of the king of Lydia. The hall gleamed with gold, wine cups and the flicker of torches dancing on marble walls. The king sat upon his throne, flanked by priests who had long been the interpreters of the heavens and mediators of the gods. Before them stood Thales, clothed only in a simple robe. No crown, no sword, no army. For the people of Lydia, only priests were allowed to speak of stars and celestial signs. But that day the king had heard a strange rumor. A foreigner dared to claim that the movements of the stars could be calculated, not merely interpreted as divine whispers. "Is it true that you can challenge the voices of the gods?" the king asked, his voice echoing through the silent chamber. Thales calmly replied, "I do not challenge the gods, your majesty. I merely read what they have already written in the sky, in laws that remain constant." His words enraged the priests, who saw it as an insult to tradition. Yet the king did not flare up in anger. Instead, curiosity lingered in his eyes. Was this merely a legend exaggerated by later Greek writers? Or did Thales truly set foot in the palace of Lydia? The historical record is difficult to confirm. Herodotus mentions the prediction of an eclipse that halted a war between Lydia and Media, with Thales' name attached to the event. But did he truly stand before the king, or was the story a symbol? That knowledge could reach even the most sacred of chambers, the royal court. What is certain is that this tale carries an eternal message. The sharp mind of one man could stand equal to swords and crowns. Fact or legend, Thales is remembered as the figure who made a king listen to logic, if only for a moment. Visual prompt, illustration of the Lydia Palace. A golden throne, a mighty king surrounded by priests, with Thales standing modest yet resolute in the center of the hall. The most famous story about Thales is the eclipse that supposedly ended the war between Lydia and Media in 585. BC. Herodotus wrote that when two vast armies faced each other, the sky suddenly darkened, causing them to cease fighting. Herodotus noted, it was Thales of Miletus who predicted the event. But did he truly calculate the paths of the sun and moon with precision? Some modern historians doubt it. Greek astronomy at the time was still limited, while complex calculations of eclipse cycles were long mastered by the Babylonians. It is possible that Thales merely knew of the Saros cycle from the east, then made a bold guess that happened to be right. Yet the interest lies not in whether it was true or not. What matters is that Thales' name became attached to the moment when logic began to challenge authority. He, a foreigner from a harbor city, was said to have predicted what had long been seen as a sign of divine wrath. Fact, perhaps. Legend, maybe. But the impact of the tale is clear. Thales became a symbol that humans could read the heavens with reason, not prayer alone. Imagine King Alyattes of Lydia, accustomed to luxury and unquestioned obedience. Upon hearing Thales' prediction of an eclipse, he might have laughed it off. But when the sun truly vanished from the sky, the scene shifted dramatically. Soldiers froze, priests were speechless, and the proud king himself stiffened upon his throne. Did Thales truly meet Alyattes? We may never know, but in Greek tradition, the story was preserved as proof that even the most powerful ruler could be silenced. By truths born of logic, Thales became a kind of mirror to power, that crowns do not always stand higher than human reason. The tale reveals how knowledge began to enter the political sphere. A king may not understand the mathematics of the stars, but he understood its effect. Terrified soldiers, priests stripped of authority, and a halted war. For Alyattes, perhaps it was a shock. For history, it was a turning point. In the palace, it was not only the king who felt shaken. The priests were the most threatened. For centuries, they held the authority of knowledge, deciding when to plant, when to wage war, and how to interpret signs from the heavens. Now a foreigner had shown that with simple calculation, one could explain what they claimed as divine secrets. Legend speaks of heated debate before the king. Priests accused Thales of arrogance, of thinking himself higher than the gods. Thales calmly answered, "I merely read patterns that are already there." Did this conversation truly occur? We have no written proof from his time. But in oral tradition, Thales is portrayed as one who dared to challenge the priests' monopoly on knowledge. This was not just a battle of ideas, it was a struggle for influence. If the people began to trust logic, priestly authority would slowly crumble. That is why Thales is remembered not only as a philosopher, but as a symbol of a silent revolution, the shift from superstition to reason. Did Thales truly stand in the palace of Lydia? Some historians think the story is only an embellishment added later to glorify him. His name was often used as a symbol, the wise man who overcame myth with reason. Even Herodotus, our main source, wrote centuries after the events. That leaves a wide gap between historical fact and legendary narrative. For ancient Greek writers, placing Thales in front of a king was an easy way to stress their message. That knowledge could reach the highest halls of power. Whatever the truth, the story has endured for millennia. The facts may be debatable, but the symbolism is clear. The courage to think can pierce the walls of a palace, even without soldiers or crowns. After Lydia fell to Persia, the stories of Thales did not end. His name was also linked with the new rulers. Some accounts say he once offered military advice on diverting the Halys River to allow an army to cross. Was this true or merely another tale to exalt him? Modern historians treat the story with skepticism. Perhaps Thales was truly involved. Perhaps he was merely used as a symbol of Greek ingenuity against mighty empires. Either way, his name kept appearing in grand political contexts: Lydia, Media, and Persia, as though he were not just a philosopher, but an advisor to kings. These tales show something important. Early philosophy was not merely quiet contemplation, but could intersect with warfare, diplomacy, and power. From pyramids in Egypt to the palace of Lydia, shadows became a constant symbol in Thales' stories. With the shadow of a stick, he measured a pyramid. With the shadow of the moon, he predicted an eclipse. And with the shadow of reason, he unsettled a palace. The king's power stood on gold and swords, the priest's power on myth. Thales offered an alternative, the power of reason. Whether he truly stood in those courts or not, his story has been retold as though he had. The shadow of Thales stretched longer than his life. He transcended fact and became legend. Another tale remembered is how Thales suddenly grew rich by renting out olive presses only to prove that philosophers could be wealthy if they wished. Though seemingly unconnected to Lydia's palace, the theme remains. Thales is always portrayed as standing above wealth and power. If he ever truly entered the palace, it was not with the ambition to be a court official or permanent advisor. He entered as a brief guest, bringing ideas, then returned to simplicity. This is why his story holds such power. A man without political ambition could still command the attention of kings. Over time, it became difficult to separate what Thales actually did from what was added by his students or later writers. The eclipse, the royal council, the pyramid measurement, all may be a blend of reality and glorification. But therein lies the strength of the tale. It is not only history, but philosophical mythology. Just as the story of Socrates at trial or Archimedes running naked shouting, "Eureka!" the story of Thales in the palace lives on as an inspiring narrative, not a dry chronicle. Did Thales truly sit before the king of Lydia or Persia? We may never know. What we do know is that the tale survived not because of factual accuracy, but because of its symbolic power. It became a mirror. Knowledge can challenge power. Reason can penetrate palaces. Human thought can shake divine altars. The legend of Thales in the palace is, at its core, a story of the courage to think. Facts may blur, but the legacy of the idea is undeniable. That the world can be understood without submitting wholly to myth or authority. From the halls of ancient palaces to modern classrooms, that small flame still burns.